me tell you about 2007 for my family. 2007, we moved to Franklin, Pennsylvania at the end of June in that year. And at the beginning of July, I became pastor of Christ Church in Franklin. Later that fall, November, late November, I was traveling back from Oil City to Franklin. Thank you so much. Thank you, Hannah. I was traveling back from Oil City to Franklin on Route 8. And if anybody knows that section of Route 8 in Venango County, it parallels the Allegheny River. And on either side of the Allegheny River, there are not huge hills, but significant hills. And this particular day, while I was traveling from Oil City back to Franklin, for some reason, I noticed the hillsides. And I noticed the fact that at that particular point in time, in late November, the hillside was absolutely bare. You could not have found a leaf on a tree in either one of those hillsides on either side of the river. And I was kind of amazed by that. I thought, wow, that's really, really barren. And it was so barren that you could look through the branches down to the floor and see the leaves on the ground. It was that barren. As I traveled a little further, I started to notice a couple things that I hadn't noticed before on those hillsides. There was a tall pine tree that all of a sudden I saw on this side, and then there was another one over here, and there was a couple of them there, and 3 or 4 of them over there, and I thought to myself, wow, I've driven this several different times, but I didn't even know those pine trees were there. It took all of the rest of the leaves on the trees to be gone before I could notice those pine trees. They kind of blended in with the leaves on the trees when they were all out. And you couldn't quite see them, but it took all of the leaves on the trees to be down for the pine trees to become visible. And you know, sometimes when you're thinking about stuff like that, God taps you on the shoulder and says, hey, pay attention. Well, the Lord said to me, remember, beauty sometimes can only be revealed when something is barren. Beauty can only be revealed when something is barren. Like all of those fall colors, the glory of the fall colors on those trees, all had to come down to the ground for the stately pine trees to be visible. I was thinking yesterday about December the 7th, Pearl Harbor Day. I was thinking about the fact that my guess is prior to Pearl Harbor, there was a sense of patriotism in our land. Patriotism kind of goes along with being an American. But after the battleships ended up at the bottom of Pearl Harbor on that day, patriotism spiked. Think about 9/11. We were patriots before 9/11. But when the towers were on the ground and there were pieces of a plane lying in a field in Shanksville and there was a hole in the wall of the Pentagon, all of a sudden patriotism spiked. Do you get it? Only after something is laid barren sometimes can we see some degree of beauty. Some things of beauty are only revealed when life is bare. Have you found that to be true anywhere in your life? That it's only when something is barren that some other kind of beauty is revealed. Like maybe you have a deeper appreciation for the life that you're living and the life that goes on around you after the cancer diagnosis, after the heart attack, after you realize you're not quite as mobile as you used to be. You become really appreciative of the life that you have and the life that goes on around you after those things. Or maybe you have a deeper awareness of how strong you really, really are after something in your life has collapsed. Like a job or a relationship or maybe your sobriety. When that's collapsed, you become aware you're stronger than you think you are. Maybe you develop a deeper appreciation for the love and the grace of God after God has come through for you when no one or nothing ever could come through for you. See, some things of beauty are only seen, only experienced and revealed when life is bare, when life is barren. So, think with me for a minute. What does that teach us about who God is? What does it say to us about this God that tends to reveal beauty in the midst of barrenness? I want to spend a little time this morning in Isaiah chapter 11. Listen for the answer to that question. What does it tell us about God that beauty is revealed sometimes in barren places? Check this out. A shoot will come up from the stump of Jesse. From his roots, a branch will bear fruit. The Spirit of the Lord will rest on him, the Spirit of wisdom and of understanding, the Spirit of counsel and of might, the Spirit of the knowledge and the fear of the Lord, and he will delight in the fear of the Lord. Remember, I've shared with you before that word fear doesn't necessarily mean to be afraid. It means to be in awe and reverence of something. So this shoot that will come from the stump of Jesse will delight in revering the Lord. He will not judge by what he sees with his eyes or decide by what he hears with his ears. But with righteousness he will judge the needy. With justice he will give decisions for the poor of the earth. And he will strike the earth with the rod of his mouth. With the breath of his lips he will slay the wicked. Righteousness will be his belt, and faithfulness the sash around his waist. The wolf will live with the lamb. Don't miss that image. The wolf won't eat the lamb. What does it say? The wolf will live with the lamb. The leopard will lie down with the goat, same image. The calf and the lion and the yearling will all lie down together, and a little child will lead them. The cow will feed with the bear. Their young will lie down together, and the lion will eat straw like the ox. The infant will play near the cobra's den, and the young child will put its hand into the viper's nest. Now let's stop there a minute. How many of you would say that you would let your kid put their hand into a snake's den? How many of you would actually put your hand into a snake's den? How many of you wouldn't get caught near a snake? Yeah, that's what I thought. That's what I thought. But look at this image. Look at this image. The infant will play near the cobra's den, and the young child will put its hand into the viper's nest. Wow. They will neither harm nor destroy on all my holy mountain, for the earth will be filled with the knowledge of the Lord as the waters cover the sea. Thanks be to God for the reading of His Word. Amen? So I want to circle this verse for a minute. A shoot will come forth from the stump of Jesse. From his roots, a branch will bear fruit. Well, what in the world does that mean? I want you to think about this stump of Jesse as what is left of the nation of Israel. It's a reminder of something that once grew there, once was prosperous, once was fruitful, but now is not. The tree has been cut down because of Israel's sin and their rebelliousness. The tree has been cut down now, and only a stump remains. I found it interesting as I was digging through Isaiah this week that the Lord actually told Isaiah that this was going to happen at the end of chapter 6. Remember, we're in chapter 11. But at the end of chapter 6, look at what the Lord told Isaiah. The Lord will send the people far away, and the land will be completely abandoned. Even if 1/10 remain there, they will be burned again, like a terebinth or an oak, which when it is cut down, leaves a what? A stump. Its stump is a holy seed. Now, don't miss the fact that God only talks about that stump as a holy seed after the tree has been laid bare. After the tree has been cut down. Then he talks about the stump as a holy seed. See, after that, then comes redemption. A shoot is going to come up from this stump of Jesse. Remember that Jesse was the father of King David. And the scripture calls King David a man after God's own heart. don't miss the imagery. From that stump, from the stump that is tied back to the man after God's own heart, a shoot will spring up. Wow. And don't miss the fact that this shoot is not going to end up just being a sucker on the side of a tree or a sapling or something. Don't miss the fact that this shoot is going to grow up to become a tree that will have branches that will bear fruit. This thing is not going to wither when the sun comes out. This thing is going to grow and grow and grow until it becomes mature and bears fruit. All of this from something that looks like it's dead. Wow. What's that tell us about God? Well, it seems to me, it tells us that God sees things a little differently than we do, right? We see endings, we see finality, but God sees possibility. God doesn't see just one piece of the picture. God sees the whole picture and how all the pieces in our lives fit together, including the barren ones, the hard places. See, the shoot that comes up is the offer of redemption to you and to me. Just to remind you that Christmas, when the first Christmas came, it didn't come into a world that was ready for it. When the first Christmas came, it came into a world where the people of God, Israel, their sin and their rebellion had gotten to a point where it was almost insurmountable. It was not going to be able to be overcome. They were now living under foreign domination. Now, they'd done that before in Egypt, but now Rome was in their land, and Rome was in power. And this idea of a Messiah for a lot of people by this time had become just a legend. It wasn't something to think about. It was just kind of part of their story. And they were servants to this pagan power, right? It looked barren for the people of God. But watch this. It's into that culture, into that moment that Jesus Christ is born. The shoot that springs up from the stump of Jesse. It's into that place that looks absolutely barren as far as the people of God are concerned, that Jesus Christ is born. He is the fruit of this stump that bears a shoot. Now, what in the world does that have to do with the way that you and I live our lives? Well, as I thought about this came to my mind. If this is who God is, if God is able to take stuff that looks barren and laid waste and dead and bring new growth from it to the point that the fruit from that new growth ends up being the salvation of our souls. God can do that. Then friends, don't discard dead places in your life. Don't ever discard the places that seem to be barren. Because God can do more with what seems dead than He can with many places that seem to be alive. Think about the cross for just a minute. Think about the fact that when you compare the cross and that moment in Israel's history with the people who led the people of God at that time, God was trying for years and years to get the people of God, the leaders of the people, on the same page with Him. He kept trying to do that, and they wouldn't do it. So what does God do? God takes a cross, puts His Son on it to die, and in that place where His life is laid barren, you and I find our life. Our life, our redemption, comes from a dead place, sisters and brothers, from a barren place. I don't know about you, but hope springs alive when you start to see things like that. When you start to see the barren places and the dead places, the stumps, if you will, of your life, when you start to see them not as dead and final places, but as spots where God can do His thing, all of a sudden hope springs alive. How important is hope in your life and mine? How important is it that things might, can, will, are going to change? What happens when there is no hope in our lives? Maybe you remember the name Dr. Bernie Siegel. Anybody remember that name? Yeah, not too many. Oh, come on, some of you are as old as I am. And you remember that name, Dr. Bernie Siegel, who was a guy that really believed intensely in the importance of the spiritual dimension of our life to the overall healing of a body. Dr. Siegel tells this story about a woman that was receiving treatment for cancer. And the doctor threw everything he knew at her cancer, and nothing was working. Finally, there was this moment, reluctantly, the doctor said to this woman, I just don't think we're going to be able to help you. I think that you're beyond any medicine that we have. You better think about getting your life in order and enjoying whatever time you have left. Well, that was not acceptable to this woman. And so she left the United States and went to another country where there were some experimental cancer treatments that weren't yet licensed in the U.S. And after a few weeks, lo and behold, she started to feel better. And as time passed, she felt better and better to the point where she was able to start playing the piano again, something that she really, really loved to do. When she got back to the United States, she made an appointment with her doctor. And at the appointment, she told her doctor she was really, really feeling better and was excited about this treatment. And the doctor went ballistic on her. The doctor scolded her for going outside the United States. That treatment is never going to work. It's never going to work for you. Any illusion that you feel better is just that, an illusion. It's not the truth. You are dying. Now imagine if you're that woman and you leave your doctor's appointment. What are you thinking to yourself? What are you feeling? Discouraged? You think? Despondent? Confused a little? Dr. Siegel says, that woman went home that night, crawled into bed, and died that night. See, when hope is snuffed out, there are incredible consequences. When all we see in the barren places of our lives is death, is endings, then there is no hope. Hope is snuffed out. But when we choose to center our lives on this God that has a habit of taking dead stuff and bringing new growth from it, when we choose to center our lives there, oh my goodness. All of a sudden, dead things, barren things become places where God can prove His stuff. Right? So, some things of beauty are only revealed when life is barren, when life is hard. But when your life and mine rests in the hands of this God that has given us Jesus Christ, barren places become just that, a place where beauty can be seen. I guess the question that we have to wrestle with this morning is, how do we see the barren places in our lives? How do we see them? Do we see them as just stumps? Like if we stay with that image for a minute, do we call the guy that can grind the stumps up and grind them to pieces so that we don't see them anymore? Or we just let the stumps be? The hard places, the barren places, do we just let them be? And watch for God to do what only God can do. Bring new growth from barren places. I came across a story this week that really touched my heart. This church decided to have a 5-day, week-long vacation Bible school kind of a thing during Christmas. So you have the image. At the end of this week, there was this little boy who was really excited about the fact that they had made, as part of this 5-day VBS, little ceramic trays. And he was really excited about giving the one that he had made to his mom. Now, it didn't look like a whole lot, but it was important to him to be able to give it to his mom. So when the final day was over, the boy was traveling down this long hallway between where the event happened and the door that he would meet his mom. And he was so excited about giving this tray to his mother that as he ran down this hall, he got caught in his feet, and he tripped and he fell, and the tray went on the ground and shattered into pieces. The boy was uncontrollable. He just sat there and sobbed and sobbed and cried and cried. And the adults would say, you know what, it's okay. We'll help you make another one. Or maybe you can think about giving your mom something else for Christmas. But no. His grief was insurmountable. Finally, Mom walked in the door at the end of the hall. Didn't take her long to put two and two together and see what's going on. And she came up to her son and she stooped down beside him. And she said, well, now, let's gather all these pieces up and we'll take them home and we'll glue them together and we'll see what we can make of them. That is the light of Christmas. That God chose to respond to the barrenness of his people then and now. In a baby, he stooped down to you and to me. With whatever the brokenness might happen to be in our lives, he stooped down to us and said, let's pick up these pieces and we'll put them together and we'll make something with it. Amen? That's Christmas. And by the way, it's Christmas not just for you and for me, but it's that message of Christmas for this church called First Church. Right? Maybe it's a simpler way to say it. Your brokenness is not a deterrent to God's purpose. Your brokenness is not a deterrent to God's purpose. And you know what? Neither is First Church's brokenness a deterrent to God's purpose, because God has got good things in store for our life together. And it's not going to be in any way affected by things that seem to be broken, because Christmas tells us this God stoops down to where we are, takes the pieces and says, let's see what we can do with this. Wow. I don't know what feels barren in your life, whether you're here, whether you're online. I don't know what might feel kind of bare or barren in your life. Sometimes that shows up physically. Sometimes that shows up spiritually. Sometimes emotionally. Sometimes there are outside forces that kind of impinge on us and make us feel like we're barren in some way. But what I know to be true is this, because it's happened countless times in my life. Can I ask you, how many times in your life has God stooped down beside you and put the pieces back together? How many times? See, that's this God that we worship. And if God did it already, how many times? God can do it right now. Whatever that brokenness, that barrenness might look like in your life, God can do that. God can put that back together. Our job is to let Him have the pieces. Here, God. And every time, God's going to say, let's see what we can do with this. Because I, for one, am a witness that He's done it countless times in my life.